Recognition of numerical and longhand years with important dates. This study was conducted by Tessa Cremer, Ashley Sanborn, Abigail Castle, with affiliation to South Dakota State University. This study examines the ability to use short-term memory and recognition to find the difference between remembering numerical and longhand years. Based off of current research conducted, we found that the numbers were easier to encode and recognize than alphabetics, or longhand terms. Using this, we theorized that the participants who took the survey asking to memorize important dates in numerical form were more likely to recognize more dates than those asked to memorize important dates in longhand form. The independent t-test sample conducted indicated a negative correlation between memory and recognition of longhand form of important dates. These findings were consistent with the research that we conducted on these factors.
Working memory enables us to comprehend information, to learn, and to use reasoning to make decisions. However, working memory is not infinite. It has a limited capacity as it is only intended for temporary storage and utilization of information. Working memory has a limited capacity for both the length of items you are able to work with at a time, the amount of time you are able to retain the information in your working memory, and there is a difference between numbers and letters as far as capacity is concerned. For our research project, we hypothesized that there is a difference between working memory's capacity for numerical years, 2020, and longhand years, 2020. We also speculated that people have a greater capacity to remember numerical years as opposed to years written in longhand format. Working memory enables us to comprehend information, to learn, and to use reasoning to make decisions in a timely manner. However, working memory is not infinite. It has a limited capacity as it is only intended for the temporary storage and utilization of important information. Working memory has a limited capacity for both the length of items you are able to work with and the time that you are able to retain the information in your working memory. There is also a difference between numbers and letters. For our research project, we hypothesized that there is a difference between working memory's capacity for numerical years and longhand years. We also hypothesized that people's working memory has a greater capacity for numerical years as opposed to years written in longhand format. During our preliminary research, we found that working memory was responsible for the ability to process letters and numbers. We found that the length of the items affects encoding more than the complexity of the features of the items. We found that visual working memory has a higher capacity when the stimuli it's processing are familiar. We found that distractors work because they switch the use of your working memory from the information you're trying to retain to the distraction. And we found that longer wait periods translated to lower scores on recall tests.
Within our experiment, data was collected from 48 SDSU students using an online experiment. 43 of these participants answered the demographic questions. Ages of the participants ranged from 17 to 24. Gender consisted of 16 males and 27 females, with Caucasian being the highest race identified at 97%. Question Pro was used to make the two short-term memory recall tasks that the participants were asked to complete, and Sona was used to distribute the tasks to the participants. An experimental research design was used to try and answer our hypothesis. One task asks for the participant to recall dates in numerical form, while another asks the participant to recall dates in longhand format. The tasks use prominent historical dates in U.S. history. Examples include 1776, 1929, and 2001.
We did find that participants were able to recognize numerical years that we had shown them easier than years written in longhand format. However, when you look at the number of participants who got our 4 correct years, which again are 1642, 1776, 1945, and 1963 correct, they're about the same on each test. 1642 was the year that most participants were able to identify on the recognition test. We attribute this in part due to familiarity. 1642 was, as I'm sure you learned when you were in school, the year that Columbus sailed to America. 1776 was the year America declared independence from Britain. 1945 was the year that World War II ended, and 1963 was the year that JFK was assassinated. It was interesting to see that recency had little effect on participants' ability to correctly identify the years on the recognition test. Okay, so we did find that people were able to identify the correct years that we had shown them when the years were in numerical form as opposed to longhand format. The years that we showed people are marked by the white stars, so they're 1642, 1776, 1945, and 1963. Our participants did do worse recognizing years that were shown to them on longhand format as opposed to numerical format. However, they still did pretty good recognizing the 4 years that we did show them, which of course were 1642, 1776, 1945, and 1963. As you can see, overall, people were able to identify 1642 the best, the most frequently on both longhand and numerical. So part of that could be because of how familiar that is and how much we would have learned about it as kids during school.
The limitations we encountered during our study was that we had a relatively small sample size of only 48 participants. Our demographics were almost entirely Caucasian at 97% Caucasian. The ages that we had complete our study were only 17 to 24. All of the above makes it relatively hard to apply the results to a larger population. For future direction, you could conduct the research in an area with a more diverse demographic so that you could get people that are not just Caucasian, so maybe 50% Caucasian, 25% African American, and so on. Increase the participation size so it would be easier to apply it to a larger population if we had more than 48 participants and if it wasn't just participants that attended SDSU college in South Dakota. Include more years that were asked to be memorized in the recognition portion of the survey. So in our survey, we had years that were asked to be memorized, but then didn't include a lot of those within the portion of the recognition. So you could include more of the dates we asked to be memorized into the portion that we asked to be recognized.
In conclusion, we did find our original hypothesis to be correct. There was a difference between numerical recognition and longhand format recognition. We also found that people are more likely to remember the numerical form of the year rather than the longhand format of the year, which would make sense because, as we said before, people are more used to seeing the numerical form of years.